Okay, then let's go ahead and begin. Call the meeting to order. We're at the MPOJC Urbanized Area Policy Board. Today's Wednesday, May 29th, 2024 at approximately 4:30 p.m. and we're in the beautiful new North Liberty City Hall and Council Chambers. Kent, do you want to recognize alternates?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've got Eric Sittig here for Mayor Chris Hoffman of North Liberty. Thank you, Eric. And Supervisor Lisa Green Douglas for Rod Sullivan of Johnson County. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Mo.
Motion by Mo, second. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll go to Kent to set the next board meeting date.
Yeah, we've tentatively have July 10th on our list for our next meeting. Our Transportation Improvement Program is due July 15th, and that's the last Wednesday prior to July 15th. So hopefully July 10th works for everyone. Location still to be determined.
It works for me. Thank you. A public discussion of any item not on the agenda. Or any members of the public want to address the board? Okay, we'll go on to transportation planning, and this is a public hearing and consideration of amendment to the FY 24-27 MPO Transportation Improvement Program, also called TIP. Welcome, Hannah. I open the public hearing.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Hannah Neal, Associate Transportation Planner. This is really close. Okay. Sorry. Can you guys still hear me?
Thank
Cool.
you.
Okay. As mentioned, we are asking the policy board to amend the adopted FY 24-27 TIP. The TIP is the programming document for all surface transportation projects that receive state or federal funding, including street and highway, transit, rail, bike and ped projects in the Iowa City urbanized area. MPO submits the TIP annually to the Iowa DOT to document the status of local transportation projects using state and federal funds. To utilize these funds, the projects must be in the TIP with accurate scope and funding source. Iowa DOT has requested an amendment to change a project terminus for the new bridge, grade and pave traffic signs on I-380 project in Johnson County. The current project location is listed as 1.0 miles north of Forever Green Road to north of Swan Lake Road, and the updated project location would read north of I-80 to north of Swan Lake Road. The Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended approval of this amendment at their May 21st meeting, and we are requesting approval of the proposed amendment. Kathy Cutler is also here from DOT if you have questions, or I can do my best.
Yeah, I can jump into and just try and explain a little bit about what this is about. So this is an open project that the DOT has currently that's in our existing transportation improvement program, like Hannah mentioned. I had a meeting with the DOT District 6 folks here maybe a few weeks ago and actually asked about this just because when we get these requests from Ames, they don't always really tell us what it's about. They just know they need the amendment. So I'll do the best to explain this, and some of you may have already witnessed this. If you are on I-380, southbound towards 80, and you want to exit towards either Davenport or Des Moines, many of you, like myself, may have missed that exit. It's a little bit interesting because when you, around Forever Green Road, there's actually another lane that gets picked up, and if you don't realize that, you think you're in the right lane, but you're actually not in the farthest right lane possible then to actually exit. So what this does is allow the DOT some flexibility to actually put up another, I'm going to call it a truss, that actually expands all the way over the interstate with some additional signage to help folks make sure they get that exit safely. Kathy, did I do an okay job there? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any comments or questions? Kent, did you receive any public input?
We did
on
not.
This?
No.
Okay.
No, we did not.
Thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll consider amendment to the FY 24-27 TIP program. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the amendment.
Okay,
Second.
motion by John. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now update on the MPOJC 25 Transit Project.
Me again. Thanks, Louise. So every year, Coralville, Iowa City, and University of Iowa Canvas Transit Systems all program projects for FTA, Federal Transit Administration funds. These projects will be included in the FY25 Iowa DOT Consolidated Transit Funding applications that we at the MPO complete for each system, and in the FY25 to 28 TIP, which I'll talk about a little bit in the next agenda item. Not every project listed in the program of projects will be funded. However, in order to be funded, they need to be in this program of projects. This information is being distributed to you for your review and will be included in the draft 25 to 28 TIP, which will also be presented to you at your May meeting. Like Kent said, this is, that's this meeting. All three transit agencies will hold public hearings and have their program of projects approved as part of their consolidated funding application process. Those are due June 21st. Coralville is having their public hearing June 11th. Iowa City is having theirs June 4th, and Canvas will be having theirs June 6th. That's all I have.
Thank you, Hannah. Any questions for Hannah? Okay, we'll go on to consider approval of draft 25 to 28 MPOJC Transportation Improvement Program projects. Is that a you again, Hannah?
That's me again. This is the last one, I promise. So again, this is our annual Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. This one will cover FY25 to 28 4-year span. The project list is in your packet, and feel free to review those projects. There are a couple things to note. The I-380 project has not been updated in the project list because you all just approved to amend it. So now that that vote has gone through, the project will be amended and updated in the correct order. Please also note that the Johnson County project, number 52834, if you're looking for it, that project should not be in our project list. It does have to be in TPMS, which is the system that we use to organize the projects, but it should not be in our MPO document. As a county project, it just shouldn't be in there. So that will be removed before the final submittal of the document. Just as a reminder, projects not under contract will automatically roll over. Iowa DOT has also added a few new projects, and Kathy, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. In 2026, there is $2.4 million for a bridge deck overlay on I-380 at the CIC Railway, 3 miles east of I-380. In 2027, there's roughly $2.6 million in STBG funds, with a project total of $3.2 million total to pave Highway 6 in Tiffin from Grant Street to Park Road. And then in 2028, there's $7.4 million in STBG funds for a $9.3 million project for a new bridge and right-of-way on Highway 6 over the Iowa River, 0.2 miles east of the east junction of Iowa 1 in Iowa City. And again, Kathy, did I miss anything? Okay, cool.
Can you repeat where that in Iowa City, the Highway 1 and Highway 6?
Yes, so it's over the Iowa River, 0.2 miles east of the east junction of Iowa 1 in Iowa City.
So this is the
going
Iowa DOT
out.
bridge over the Iowa River, just a little bit east of Riverside Drive.
Okay. Okay. Yep. I know.
Yep. And as you will recall, we award STBG and TAP funds every 2 years. And at your March meeting last year, you all awarded 4 projects. Coralville's Dubuque Street and Forever Green Road roundabout project, you awarded $675,000 in STBG funding. North Liberty's South Dubuque Street reconstruction Phase 2 project received $1.1 million in STBG funds. And University Heights Sunset Street and Melrose Ave received $225,000 in STBG funds. These 3 projects were programmed in FY27, so they were included in last year's FY24 to 27 TIP. The 4th project is Iowa City's Burlington Street Highway 1 Bridge Improvements Project for $7.3 million in STBG funds. However, this project is programmed in FY28, so it could not be included in last year's TIP. It is included in this year's TIP. And the split is because there was not enough targeted funding to cover all the projects in FY27. So that being said, moving on to the transit portion. The transit portion of the TIP includes operating funding and projects from the program of projects, which we just discussed in the last item. Mainly includes buses and equipment replacement, as well as funding for new transit facilities for all 3 agencies. And just something to note, Coralville has included 2 light-duty electric expansion buses. Iowa City has included 10 heavy-duty electric buses with charging equipment, and CAMBUS has included 6 heavy-duty electric replacement buses in their program of projects, so that's exciting. We're getting the fleet electrification is well on its way. And again, the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended approval at their May 21st meeting. So today we're asking for approval of the draft FY25 to 28 MPOJC TIP projects with those 2 changes that I mentioned. This draft TIP will be submitted to Iowa DOT for review by June 15th, and the MPO will begin the public input process for approval of the final TIP in July, which you will see at your July 10th meeting. I threw a lot at you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And just a reminder for clarification, like Hannah had stated earlier in the former agenda item. So all the projects you see, the actual infrastructure projects in the TIP are funded. So those projects, not fully funded, but those projects received some funding either from the DOT or the MPO, or even if it's an earmark, and there are a few in the TIP as well. So all of the infrastructure projects actually have that funding in its specific programmed year. If it doesn't, then the programmed funding, well, the funding does not exist then. So we have to make sure that the project and the funding matches the correct year and that it's the right source and all of those things. So that's why we bring this to you today. As Hannah suggested, we will be bringing, this is just the project list. The actual entire transportation improvement program will come to you at your July meeting for approval because, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, it's due July 15th. So we'll meet July 10th and we'll get that approved as well. Hannah also mentioned, but just a reminder that unlike the infrastructure projects that are all actually, that have all received funding and that are programmed in a specific year, the transit projects are different. So that's operations funds as well as sort of what I'll call a wish list, for lack of a better term, of projects that we would like to receive funding for. And as funding becomes available through the DOT for buses, for instance, we need to have those specific projects or buses in the TIP to allow us to receive that funding once it becomes available. So it's sort of a wish list, but once that funding is out there, then we were able to grab that funding and apply it to a project or a bus that's in the TIP. So they operate a little bit differently. But again, we'll be bringing back the entire thing to you all in July. We brought these project lists through our technical advisory committee, as Hannah mentioned, last week. And there was just a few minor details that we needed to correct, but otherwise they were happy with it. Then we'll begin our public input process.
I just have kind of a funding 101 question. So you mentioned like when the money becomes available, we can grab it. Is this, is the source of the funding done through an allotment of per like municipality, county, et cetera? And so it really is that sort of money goes in after the state has kind of.
Yep, that's right. So there's different types. There's a lot of different type of discretionary funds that the DOT has that get sort of handed down. There's a bridge improvements fund that basically, if you have a bridge that ranks so poorly that there's $1 million available per year for one bridge, and they offer that money, and then that project has to be on a different list to be able to receive those funds. For buses, it's the same thing. There's basically a running list of hundreds of buses throughout the state that are past their useful life, And then as long as they're in our TIP, they just keep rising towards the top. And once funding becomes available from the DOT, we're able to reach out and grab those funds, so long as we know what we're going to use it for and have it programmed in our TIP.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of reverse from all of the rest of the funds, really, that you all deal with in your budgets.
Well, and it's nice that it's not an application process.
Right. Yep. Yep, that's right. That's a good question.
Any other comments? I need a motion for approval of draft FY 2025-2028 MPOJC TIP program.
So moved, Harmson.
Okay, motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Brian. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then we go to consider a resolution approving the MPOJC, am I right here? Yeah, FY 2025 Transportation Planning Work Program.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So good afternoon. Attached in your packet is a draft copy of the MPO FY25 Transportation Planning Work Program for your review. The work program includes all locally requested projects received from your member entities, and those usually come through our technical advisory committee, and we had that discussion with them last week. It also includes general projects and procedures required by the DOT, the Federal Highway Administration, and the FTA. And besides being a federal requirement, staff relies on the work program to, of course, give us our guidance throughout next year about what projects we need to be working on and when we need to be working on those projects. My hope is that you've had a chance to review the document and let us know if you'd like to see any modifications before we submit this document to our federal partners for final approval. And we'll continue to take requests like we always do throughout the year and try and get those projects completed as time permits. It's usually not a problem. On page 27 of the work program itself, that lists the specific requests that we got from all of your entities, your planners, your engineers, your city managers, and so forth. But like I mentioned every year, that only really represents a very small portion of the work we actually do for a few different reasons. One is that we've got routine business that we have to do for the FTA, the FHWA, and the DOT every year, and those are sort of sprinkled throughout the work program. Another reason is that we have carryover projects. A lot of the projects we work on for your entities, we can't complete in a year. So those might take 1 year, 2 years, even 3 years sometimes to complete. So those carryover projects are sprinkled sort of throughout the work program. And then the last is that probably not a week and certainly not a month goes by where we're not talking to one of your staffs about a request for work from the MPO. So like I say, the very last page shows the projects that that were submitted to us upon request, but really that probably represents 20% of the work we'll actually do this year. That's just the way it has to be done for our federal partners. So happy to answer any questions that you all might have for me about the work program. Same as the previous item at their May 21st meeting, the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee did unanimously recommend approval of the work program.
Any comments? So I'll consider a resolution approving the MPOJC 25 Transportation Planning Work Program. Is there a motion?
So moved, Burgess.
Motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, I got a second here. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now, Kent, you have an update on the Crandick feasibility study?
Yeah, thanks. This is just a verbal update. I didn't provide anything in your packet. And also forgive me if some of you have heard some of this, but I know some of you probably haven't, so I'll sort of start from the beginning. Many of you know this board gave us direction to move forward with bus rapid transit feasibility study last fall. Since that time, we've got a consultant selected and hired, and they're working on the project as we speak. That was Felsberg, Holt, and Olivig and Nelson Nygaard Associates doing a collaboration on that project. Felsberg, Holt, and Olivig actually worked on the MAX project, I believe it's called, in Fort Collins, which was the exact same thing we're looking at, is taking away a rail bed, an existing rail bed, and actually converting that into a bus rapid transit line. And also Nelson Nygaard are well known throughout the country, if not the world, for their transit work. And they actually worked on the study that, the last transit study for Iowa City, Cambus, and Coralville that was completed a few years ago. So we've got a good team working on the project. The cost for the project is shared between Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, Johnson County, and the University of Iowa. And the project itself is going to look at the feasibility of converting the Crandick Railroad line from its current state into a bus rapid transit feasibility, or excuse me, a bus rapid transit line, as you can imagine, roughly from Penn Street up here in North Liberty, roughly to Burlington Street in Iowa City. The study is being led by a steering committee with representatives from each one of the entities that's helping contribute to the fund, or to fund the project, excuse me, as well as 2 members from the Department of Transportation, one from their passenger rail side or their rail side, the other being from their transit side, and then also a representative from Greater Iowa City, Inc., their Better Together 2030 group as well is represented on the steering committee. The project is moving along nicely. Currently, the consultant is refining draft alternatives and screening for the actual alignment itself. As you can imagine, the bulk of the tracks are there and the alignment's there. What we don't know is sort of how it's going to operate at its north terminus and its south terminus. So what they did was they screened about 12 or so different potential north and south termini. Again, they screened those against about 20 or so different goals, and the goals would have been to serve areas with a lower median income, for instance, areas with no access to a vehicle, areas that might get the most bang for our buck, so to speak, in attracting the most ridership, and so on. And there was about 20 of those goals that they screened the initial sort of 12 ideas against. They've since narrowed that down to about 3. So right now, they're really looking at about 3 sort of final alignments, so to speak, and they are refining their cost estimates for those 3 alignments or those 3 alternatives, as well as the ridership for those 3 alternatives. They're going to do some modeling work, building off the passenger rail studies that were completed back in 2020. And the ultimate goal of the study is to be able to look at the passenger rail studies. That was a 3-phase study completed in 2020. With this study, and basically decide as a large community which one we prefer, and then of course to move forward with a future project. The only last thing I'll say about that, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, is that they unfortunately had a pretty serious illness, their project lead, and they asked for a 60-day extension, which we've since granted. It was to be completed by July 1st, and now it'll be around September 1st. But to get the best possible product, it just seemed to be reasonable. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah.
I have a couple questions because, as you know, I was on this when you were doing a different version of the feasibility study. We were looking at rail at that time.
Yep.
So part 1 of my question is, at the north end, will there be consideration or something that this entity will fund to provide like a park and ride type option?
Yeah.
And then that's part 1. And then part 2 is, when you talk about feasibility and you're talking about, I think, maybe the physical aspect of it, can this be done, and what are the costs associated, and what would be potential ridership and all that? But does it include the one part that I think is pretty important, is Crandick's willingness to let us purchase this this line, because they're making a lot of money as a parking lot for those trains from ADM up on the north end. And so I can't see them being all that willing.
Yeah. So the answer to your first question about the park and ride is yes, the consultant is looking at that, and they will be providing a cost estimate for a simple park and ride. It'll probably be some sort of shelter, an enhanced shelter that you wouldn't see maybe along the line, in terms of like the smaller shelters or the kind of the bus stops. But they will include a cost estimate for a park and ride with sort of some simple amenities. And the answer to your second question is, prior to starting this study and hiring the consultant, we actually got a letter signed from Crandick representatives stating that they would not, I don't know how to exactly say this, but that they would not stand in the way of us doing the study, and that they would seriously consider anything that the larger community wanted. So, they can't say whether they would allow it because they haven't seen the study, just like we haven't seen the study, but they said they were not opposed to studying it, and said, if that's what's best for the community and that's what's best for Crandick, then they would certainly entertain that. So we did get that in writing and wanted to make sure they were okay with it.
Great, thank you.
We actually got it in writing twice because we had it in writing. We had it in writing, and then there was some delay for the board to give us direction on that sort of thing. And then we actually checked back in, and they said, yep. They said, because it was around the COVID time and things were in flux, and they said, nope, we stand by it, and they sent us a new letter, so we're good to go there. Good question, though.
News.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other
Any
questions
other
about the study?
questions? Yeah.
Yeah. John Green's actually is on the stakeholder committee representing the county. I'm obviously on the stakeholder committee, and I think it's going pretty well. Any other questions? And once we have sort of a draft, sort of complete study, I don't think it's necessary to bring, or even really advantageous to bring chapters of the study, so to speak. But once we have like a rough draft of the study, we will start sort of our public input process, so to speak. We'll make sure you all are able to see that, of course, and we'll kind of go through those motions then and make sure that everybody's happy with the study prior to finalizing it.
I actually did think of a question while you were talking. I know when I first got on council a couple of years ago, and we were starting to talk about this study that we're moving forward with. Since then, Iowa City's gone to free bus transit, well, fare free, and was wondering if if looking into that as an extension of the Iowa City model is something that's currently existing in. I just don't remember if we talked about that when we were approving this a year ago. And if not, is that just something we can talk about later once we see this?
Yeah, no, I think it is. They will provide us their best guess of what a ticket should cost, essentially, looking at national trends and that sort of thing. But it's easy enough to say, okay, we'll have X amount of riders, a million riders a year, $1 a ride kind of thing, whatever that ride cost would be, and then we can simply back that out. So anything we don't recoup in fare revenue is just something that, of course, comes out of whatever their coffers are going to pay for the system. So it should be a pretty easy thing to get a handle on. And if it's X dollars, 3 million, 5 million, whatever that might be, we'll just be able to pull that back out and say, okay, that's another $3 or $5 million we'll have to come up with annually for operations. Okay. The operations, and I have no idea what the operations cost will be for the bus rapid transit. For the passenger rail, it was somewhere in the neighborhood, if I recall, about $5 million operating cost. And that was after a fare revenue recovery of, I want to say it was like $2 or $3 million.
Thank you.
Yep. So yes, we will definitely get to the end there. Any other questions about the study?
Thank you. We'll go on to update from Iowa DOT District 6 staff, and Kathy's here to talk about projects. Thank you.
I'm here, no staff as usual. Little trivia. So we started widening Interstate 80 with a bridge. Does anybody want to guess what year?
For the 6-lane project? Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe I shouldn't guess. I'll set this one out.
Just throw out a number. We'll see how close you are.
15.
1993. Was that going to be your guess?
No, that was not going to be my
there's
guess.
no prize anyway.
That's what I
good.
meant.
So 31 years ago, we started modernizing the I-80 corridor in the Iowa City metro area. We are working on the last interchange, that at First Avenue in Coralville. The project is 75% complete and is on schedule to be done by this fall, so should be open to traffic. Hot off the presses Monday, we're going to be closing the eastbound on-ramp, that'll be closed until August. So that's going to be a major traffic situation, but we're trying to get it open before school starts. So just a heads up, I did see it was out on social media already, so we'll be getting comments on that. In addition, want to mention the configuration at First Avenue is in the diverging diamond. So it's one lane each direction, but teaching people how to just use that diverging diamond. It's the 4th one we're building in the area. So Eastern Iowa is going to be king or queen of the diverging diamonds, whichever way you want to think about it. Scott wanted me to mention the trail is also on its new bridge. Switching over to 8380, which we opened last year, in addition to the signing that we talked about that's being added, we did put down an interstate shield sign to help with that same movement southbound to get to I-80. So that shield is in place. I've seen it down there. Up at North Liberty at Penn Street, We've got the shoulders barricaded off. That's to allow us to take out the old shoulders, add the new lane and the new shoulders, and eventually switch traffic over there. So we're beefing up the shoulders on I-380 for a couple reasons. We need it for construction, but we're also going to be able to make them capable of running traffic on them. There could be a time that we'll start certain times of the day, commute times. If we need to, we could run traffic on the shoulders there, so they'll be ready for that. The interchange is a separately let project. That will just be a replacement of the Diamond interchange, but modernized again at Penn Street. Switching up to Wright Brothers, which is out of our area, but just of interest. Again, we're replacing that interchange with a diverging Diamond, as well as 6 laning from Highway 30 down to about Swisher area. That project is in a special letting in July, so some work will start there yet this fall. Again, a multi-year project. So that's all I've got for tonight. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I don't have a question, but I did just want to mention that without stealing her thunder, I think Kathy will be retiring shortly. I've been working with Kathy for, well, my entire time with the MPO, about 18 years now. I've been working with Kathy as a District 6 planner, so she's my liaison through the DOT. Want to thank her very much for being a great partner and somebody really great to work with and fun as well. So congratulations to Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there any other business from board members?
I just had a couple quick things. One is after we conclude tonight, the city manager, Ryan Heyer, has been nice enough to offer to give us a quick tour of the building for anybody that wants to stick around. And also I wanted to quick introduce Madeline Stone. So Madeline is our new associate planner. So the MPO is all fully staffed up again. Madeline's a recent graduate with 2 graduate degrees, one from the College of Public Health at the university and the other at the School of Planning. What is it? The School of Planning and Public Affairs. Yeah, sorry. It's changed name since I've went there. So welcome, Madeline.
Thank you.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't welcome you all as the North Liberty City Council and the city, on behalf of the city, welcome you all to our new facility. Something that's been a long time coming. We're proud of it, and please take Ryan up on the offer to look around.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Mayor,
Any
I
other-
did have one quick thing. Sorry, I'm over here. Disembodied voice. You may have noticed I was really quiet during the Crandick update, but that's because we have more Crandick news that we just want to preview a little bit this evening. So I am serving on a working group for the Better Together 2030 Pillar 3 initiative, which is the well-connected mobile region. And Katie Gerlach has kept us sort of active and working. And an opportunity came actually through Kelly Hayworth and the folks who ran the Hawkeye Express train for a decade in our area that most people are familiar with. There's an entity that's called Pop-Up Metro that takes lightweight passenger train cars, outfits them with high capacity batteries, and runs them on existing freight lines. So our group and a number of other, probably a lot of you have received invitations, and if you haven't yet, you will, to learn more and to see a presentation from the Pop-Up Metro folks. The way that they pitch this opportunity is, and the platforms are all modular and can be built very, very quickly and can be moved. The way that they pitch this opportunity is kind of as a live pilot or even like a rolling study so that you can assess the ridership, help try to establish commuting patterns, and then invest heavily in something more permanent. They sell it as for the cost of the study, we get you the train, and for the fact that it takes months rather than years to try and activate. They're looking at a route from Penn Street all the way to the Health and Human Services building down on Dubuque. So a little bit longer route than the bus rapid transit study. But I think we will have an opportunity to understand what the funding could look like for that, have a very rapid potential turnaround. Katie Gerlach's been doing a wonderful job engaging all kinds of stakeholders along the Crandick corridor, and I think UIHC is a big player in this because of the North Liberty Hospital as well. So Mackenzie Drew from Greater IC, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add about the pop-up metro or?
That's okay, I'd be happy to.
Of course.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I think Councilor Burgess did a great job sort of talking about the potential of the program as a pilot and as sort of a proof of concept to really see. As we've heard, there have been a lot of studies done, but there can only be maybe well-grounded, but still assumptions about ridership. And so this is a way to really say, if we're hearing from residents, this is important to have regional transit, they can show us by demonstrating ridership, and we can make informed decisions from that program. It is a pilot program that can be for 3 years. And then at that point, if it's not working, they can pack up the platforms and the trains, or you can invest in a more permanent solution or continue to lease the trains. We are, again, meeting with stakeholders right now. There is a train in operation in Pennsylvania, so we're planning a trip in July to go look at that. So if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. I'd be happy to connect you directly with Katie. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that, as Councilor Burgess mentioned, the trains are battery powered, which actually enables a lot of opportunity for federal funding from the DOT, the DOE, EPA even. And so right now, as we think about a budget, they're in the process of budgeting, and they should give us something hopefully by the middle of June. But we're anticipating an 80% federal and then 20% local contribution, or even perhaps a 90-10. So really finding ways to leverage federal dollars to make this a possibility for our community. As I said, happy to answer any questions or talk with individuals or connect you to the next meeting. We've sort of been on a road trip with people with about meetings.
Isn't the next one June 6th?
June 6th, correct.
And it's the Oakdale?
Typically, yeah, so we've hosted the previous one as Oakdale as well, because that would be on the Crandic line. So we're trying to illustrate also what future development and community planning could be around these hubs should it move forward.
So we're talking about the exact same line as the bus. I said here under my breath, oh, this actually might happen in my lifetime then. But what is the timing on a bus thing if it were to happen and we went that route? And because this sounds like they could set it up tomorrow, pretty much. I mean, almost. And then take it away if it's not working. But
yeah, so this pop-up metro concept isn't new necessarily. So the gentleman that actually, I don't know if you want to say owns it or manages it, whatever, he contacted us about 6 or 8 years ago with this idea. But at that point in time, they didn't even have any trains. I mean, he said, I'm going to do this. Are you interested? And we said, well, we're interested, but come back when, you actually have a company and something happening. So, which he has since done. And he, if nobody mentioned it, has a stake in all or part of Iowa Interstate Railroad. So he knows the area very well, doesn't have a stake so much in Crandic, but knows the area well and obviously knows what would be good for his company. I mean, to answer your question, I think, Lisa, I don't know is the answer. Our study, the Bus Rapid Transit Feasibility Study, should be done September 1st or so. Like everything, it's the feasibility study, so it's a high-level review of what it might cost, if it's possible, what the regulations are, that sort of thing, and how to basically implement if we so chose. It's not construction documents, it's not a set of build plans. So, I mean, that's going to take a while longer. The pop-up metro.
But a while, like 3 years?
Well, if we decided to, I mean, if all the community said we've got the funding, we want to build it, I mean, we could hire somebody and start the next day. How long? I would think within a year you could have everything you needed to construct it. The pop-up metro, that's sort of the idea behind it, is that the tracks are there. I'm going to say but their company has this kit, they call it, where they come in. They've got the train cars, they've got modular platforms, everything you need. They set it up, and you're off and running. But I do think even with the pop-up metro, there's going to be some things that probably need to be done. I don't know what the list would look like, but some of the crossings and things you're probably still going to have upgrades for safety and controls and that sort of thing. I'm not a rail expert, but I do think there's going to be some of that probably still has to occur. So I don't know that anybody really knows exactly what the timing would look like yet. But I know I've talked to Mackenzie about it, I've talked to Laura about it quite a bit. And in my best estimation, we get the Bus Rapid Transit Feasibility Study done. We know what the cost of that will be, roughly, ballpark. We know what the cost of passenger rail will be, ballpark. I think as a community, we sort of need to pick which direction we might want to go. You know, if for instance, we decide that bus rapid transit's the only way to go, well, then it might not be worth getting the pop-up metro here. I mean, you know, just theoretically or hypothetically speaking, if we say, hey, they're both really good options, but now we want pop-up metro to come and kind of proof it and see if it works, you know, passenger rail, then I think we can pivot and go that direction too. So there's just different options. The timing of all this is a little bit wonky just since we have our study going, but like we've talked about with Laura and Mackenzie, it's the opportunity presented itself. It's here. So we're just sort of, you know, all wheels forward sort of thing. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I think the short answer.
Too late.
Yeah, I think the short answer is, of course, is the quicker the large community decides on what they want, the quicker it gets done, right? Okay. And that's going to be it's a heavy lift because we have 6 or 8 or 10 different governments, right, that all have to decide how to move forward, and that's a challenge. But you know, I think if we decide as a community, we've got the 2 studies, one's better than the other, or we want to try pop-up metro. Yeah, I mean, we can keep moving pretty quickly. It's just that decision-making process, I think, that's going to take the longest.
So, question for Mackenzie: are they driverless?
No, we would have to supply the drivers, but I have seen videos of them. And then if you go on this trip to Pennsylvania, you can see one and ride it. But I mean, it's a cute little orange trail car, battery powered. There'd be sheds on either end of the line. You know, we're talking with stakeholders right now who are asking great questions about battery power in cold weather, you know, I think when they came into the community, they were thinking a lot about student commuters. And I think we've been able to inform them, no, we're really thinking about perhaps hospital staff. And so like they're really receptive, you know, in thinking about what if you started and did from Forever Green to Burlington in Iowa City first, and then expanded, there's 2 further stops. So they're really helpful in iterating as they get more community input, scheduling, all of those things as well. To what Kent said, absolutely, there is some consideration about if certain crossings would need to be upgraded. And so that's part of what they're doing right now, and that's taking them to inform the budget, is they're working. There is actually an engineer from the Iowa Interstate Railroad who's at these meetings and is participating, and they're assessing crossings right now so that any upgrades would be factored into a budget that they would propose to us.
And to your earlier question, Lisa, about Crandic's involvement, they're involved in this process too. So they're very well aware of it. Similar to the bus, they haven't totally signed off, but they're participating in the meetings.
Great, thanks.
With Mackenzie, with a pop-up project, do they study ridership desires before they start, or they just start and use the data of ridership to determine the interest in the community? What's the order of operations for them? And then the parallel question would be on the bus study. What kind of data will we get at the end of this study regarding the community's appetite to utilize the service?
So I'll try to answer the pop-up question. I think they know it's a college community, and I think it's more we'll put it in and see what happens. I mean, I think they've done their own sort of market research, but I don't think they're actually studying what the ridership might look like. Is that safe to say? Mm-hmm. For ours, they're actually using they're piggybacking off the modeling work that was done for passenger rail. There's a model that was used that we paid for as part of that study. They're actually piggybacking off of that and sort of just respinning it. So we're not recreating the wheel for ridership, but we will get a ridership estimate and a pretty high level ridership estimate for the bus rapid transit study.
Thanks.
And I think, I was just going to say, and echoing, I think what Councilor Burgess mentioned too, with some of the timing in the new development, particularly in North Liberty, one of the goals would be to perhaps influence commuting patterns before they're established, and to think not so much about how to change how people get to and from work perhaps, but people who are new to the community or are taking new jobs at a new hospital perhaps and are planning their route to work, could there be an opportunity to have a different option they could choose from the start?
Mm-hmm. And I think where we will need to plan and collaborate is around kind of what we all want to package this as, right? Like we've been talking about regional transportation systems for a very long time. And I think, you know, that the city of Iowa City, for my colleagues here, has in our strategic plan, you know, one of the top priorities in our mobility action plan is to develop a vision statement for a singular regional transit system with Metro, Johnson County entities, and obtain initial commitments towards, you know, essentially studying that and committing to that. So I think this is a really good opportunity to say, well, here's something that actually goes through, I'm sorry, Mayor Fromm, not through your community, but that goes through, most of our communities or most of our jurisdictions. So let's really talk about this concrete thing. We will need an operator, right? So probably, again, I'm thinking like Iowa City Transit might be the operator, right? But we need to talk about that and figure out how we want to structure it. And then I think how we want to sell it to the community, market it to the community to help drive some of those patterns and ridership use.
And I've talked to Laura a little bit about this, and I've talked to some of the folks at Better Together 2030 about this as well. Is the one thing that's been a struggle for us is that the MPO board really isn't a great board to make decisions like this, because you all have to go back to your respective councils and board of supervisors to have a bigger discussion about your funds, right? So because nobody at this group really holds the purse strings, we do for the MPO funds, but not for all the local funds, so to speak, is that this board, it's just a little bit of an awkward fit for the passenger rail studies, the bus rapid transit feasibility study. And it just took us a while to get through even getting to the point where we wanted to move forward with the studies, right? And that's fine. And that was expected, but it's just a little bit harder to have those discussions here. What I'm really excited about with Greater Iowa City, for instance, and the Better Together group is what we're good at the MPO is, getting studies done, doing the transportation planning part and having that piece be done. What we're not very good at, and we really don't have the tools to do, is actually advocate for these, sell these, get the community interested. And that's what these folks are really, really good at. And that's just something where the MPO, that's just not what we're geared or set up to do. So this is an exciting opportunity, I think, the pop-up metro coming along, just to sort of like get everybody moving in one direction. What we'll choose to do remains to be seen.
I've got a question. Is that regulated by the FRA or FTA?
FRA.
FRA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These people are such train nerds. It's amazing. I've learned so much, and they're like freight people that have crossed over into passenger rail. So they do a lot of this in Europe, and they're building a big one in Peru, I believe. So yeah, but it's FRA.
Yeah, if you've not had a chance to take part in the presentation, I would definitely hit up Mackenzie and get on the list. It is a really good presentation. You can learn a lot, and then I think it'll help inform your all decision making in the future.
And did I hear during the conversation and presentation that during the time that they would do proof of concept, that they're open to iterating and reiterating, like
that I'm less sure of. They're iterating probably right now, right? And thinking like they gave us a proposed schedule at first, and we're like, actually, it'd be better if you could make this half an hour. Could you speed up the trains, right? Mm-hmm. So some of that, I know the hospital is interested about hours that aren't just 9 to 5, right? Yeah. So certainly they're taking feedback right now. I'm not exactly sure how much you could iterate once it's stood up. I think certainly that would be an option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, have you guys discussed, was it 3 years as a pilot?
3 years.
That's what they recommend, yeah.
They recommend.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, so there still might be like after a year, it's like, oh, we need to dial this back or whatever. I don't mean like on a monthly cadence or anything, but I'm just wondering if they're doing this truly as a pilot and or a proof of concept, it's like to be able to have a little bit of agility to make some modifications, but also we're working with trains, so I realize there's a finite amount of changing, but thank you.
And I might be speaking out of turn, but I don't know that there's one of these actually fully up and running yet. I think that's correct.
In the U.S.,
In the U.S., okay. Mm-hmm. So my sense is that this group is very excited about just getting one of these launched in the U.S. and getting it running. So I think for the iterations and the maneuvering and all those things, they seem ultra flexible, because I think they're just really excited to get something started. And there is some advantage to being the first in that way. So.
And just to, again, preview, what they're looking at right now is about a 20-minute travel time from Penn Street down to Dubuque Street along the route, including, and that counts all the stops. Mm-hmm. And
including one in the Iowa River landing, like we can think about, intentional economic development along those stops as well moving forward.
The Kirkwood Regional Center, the Oakdale campus, the North Liberty Hospital, the VA, College of Public Health. I mean, it hits a lot. It's a very, very good, well-positioned route. But yeah, they're talking about a 20-minute and 192 passenger maximum for each trip.
20 minutes?
That's
not bad. I like that.
Branshaw way.
Get on quickly.
Hold it.
Yeah.
We have also, as part of these stakeholder meetings, brought in local utility companies, including Mid-American Energy, because they would have to help us with the charging of the batteries. So thinking through some of those logistical items as well.
And then this also, though, follows the same sort of, I know you said maybe smaller segments to begin with, but Penn Street would be the terminus. It doesn't extend further north
It does
to like
not.
an airport or something.
Yeah.
I mean, not yet.
Okay.
Nate said Swisher at the last meeting. He's like, well,
Did
if
he?
you wanted to go to Swisher, like,
Oh, everybody does.
Well, the old interurban used
Right.
to go
Used to go.
farther up north.
To your question, Josh, I think they're willing to do whatever will fund to do, but I think they know that starting in a smaller section where the population is just the right, it's just the obvious quick starting point.
and they really do want to make it turnkey. They also provide the facility for maintenance and the people to do the maintenance. So we do not have to fix the trains during this period.
Just
Do we
drivers.
have any train drivers?
Everything else.
Thank you. Any other business? That was great. Thank you for that pop-up program. And is there any, I always say, is there any objection to adjournment, but we don't do it like this here. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. And I
everyone.
think if we just hang out here in the room.